This is everything you need to know about the Book of Bill. With the new year upon us, the ARG still ongoing, and Gravity Falls clearly ramping up for something new, I wanted to take all of our speculation, theorizing, ARG-solving, everything we've done for the Book of Bill so far and put it in one place for your convenience. And of course, I couldn't resist also tossing in a couple new mini-theories too, but you'll have to watch them to see for yourselves. And real quick, big shout-outs to the Gravity Falls subreddit and Discord, as well as the other awesome theorists here on YouTube that all worked their butts off decoding the Book of Bill and this ARG. Y'all crushed it, and we couldn't have done this without you.
Hello, Internet! This time, you're on your own.
Actually, no. No, you're not. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, where that some sunny day is finally here. Yeah, you know what that means. The one-eyed triangular 2D demon Bill Cipher has returned to wreak havoc on the world of Gravity Falls. Well, sort of. If you don't know, Gravity Falls was an animated series on Disney XD created by mystery mastermind and theorist champ Alex Hirsch. The show's about twins Dipper and Mabel Pines, who spent summer vacation with their grunkle Stan in the small town of Gravity Falls, Oregon. Here, they encounter all sorts of mysteries and codes and cryptids, gnomes that kidnap kids, and killer animatronics before they were cool. But most importantly, they help defeat Bill Cipher, a demon from the second dimension with godlike powers who was hellbent on conquering the world. This show was built from the ground up for theorizing, something Matt pointed out multiple times throughout his theories and why I've been so excited to cover it. Along with FNAF and the MCU, Gravity Falls was one of the shows that really drove an entire generation of theorists. So, when Disney announced the Book of Bill, a new addition to the Gravity Falls canon written by Alex Hirsch himself, I couldn't wait to get my grubby little theorist hands on it. Excuse me, the spirit of Grunkle Stan just kind of possessed me there. See, unlike a lot of other shows from the same period like Adventure Time or Steven Universe, there wasn't a lot of Gravity Falls. It got in, told its story in 2 seasons, and then ended. People desperately wanted more of it, which is why people are so hyped for this book. It's promised to show us more of this world and its characters, and let me tell you friends, this thing is dense. We learn so much about this world, about its history and lore, secrets about each of our main characters, and about Bill himself. And that's without cracking any of the mysteries and codes inside. You guys have been asking us to cover this book for weeks at this point, and believe me, we've heard you. We've been working on this in the background and wanted to make sure we approached it right. And just to be upfront here, friends, there's a lot here. So much in this book and the surrounding media and ARG that there's no way this won't be at least 2 episodes. So today, for this theory, we're just going to be looking at the contents of the Book of Bill itself and what it tells us about the future of this franchise. But don't you worry, it tells us a lot about the future of Gravity Falls. The main thing? Well, it's spelled out clearly in this book in bold, underlined letters, but Bill Cipher is alive. He survived the events of Weirdmageddon, and that might mean the doom of the entire multiverse. But, well, someone's looking out for us. Shake my hand, friends. It's time to get weird. So, probably the first thing we should mention about the Book of Bill is that it canonically originates within the Gravity Falls universe, like the literal physical book itself. It's a tool that Bill uses to psychically link with the reader, and it haunted Ford over in Gravity Falls until he got sick of it and threw it into a dimensional rift left behind by Weirdmageddon. It then ended up in our world, where the reader finds it and is offered a deal by Bill Cipher. Also, just want to say, in the lore and story of this world, Alex Hirsch must have found this book first, and that confirms our previous theory during Matt's retirement party that he was possessed by Bill Cipher. The author blurb on the back of the book sleeve reads, "Hi friends, I'm Alex Hirsch, creator of Gravity Town, and I'm definitely not possessed by a demon right now." And on it goes. Alex then assures us that he's definitely fine and is not calling out for help. He thinks the author doth protest too much. Regardless, the book is in our world now, and it's literally infecting other books, while also summoning Bill to broker an agreement with us, let's say. Yeah, he offers us a deal. He'll tell us all about his backstory, but in exchange, we'll owe him a favor somewhere down the road. It's at this point that we're given a choice to say yes or no, and man, I got excited. I thought this was gonna be one of those awesome sort of choose-your-own-adventure books, so naturally, as someone aware of Bill's shenanigans? I said no and flipped to the page it specified, and, well, there was some very small text upside down on the top of the page. It basically told me that not shaking Bill's hand meant that I was going to live out the rest of my life in the most boring way possible. As a middle manager at a mustard factory in Idaho with 4 children, Gervis, Horvin, Borley, and Smunt. Poor Smunt. On the real, I am absolutely the sort of person that would name like a cat Smunt, and I apologize to my future cat because, well, your name is Smunt. Okay, so it really seems like if we want all of the new juicy lore in this book, we need to agree to Bill's terms, and hey, well, I've sold my soul for less. We agreed to this deal, and whoa! In one of the coolest bits of meta storytelling I've ever seen in this sort of product, Bill starts laughing maniacally and literally rips his way through the book into our reality. Honestly, it's really slick stuff and a bit terrifying, and though you might expect Bill to immediately kill us here and move on, nah, he doesn't. He actually keeps up his end of the bargain, and then some. The content of the book becomes super varied, bouncing between sections that look like magazines, Q&As with Bill about the concept of love, a how-to guide on how to get into heaven. It's mysteriously left blank, so immediately you get what Bill thinks about that idea. There are tons of hidden codes that you'll need to decipher if you want the whole story, and there's even just straight up excerpts ripped from a book called The Great Gatsby. This was a novel by F. Scott Fitzgerald that everybody had to read in like the 7th grade, which just entered the public domain a couple of years ago, so hey, why not? It's still weird, but why not? But a couple of my favorite sections? Well, first off, there's a whole section talking about urban legends and cryptids that look like they're ripped straight out of some analog horror here on YouTube. There's Slender Man, who lies about people, Guillermo del Torso, who has a passion for cinema and has written a script for National Treasure 4, The Off Model, which is a monster that looks like bootleg IP and would just like legitimately be a good monster for this sort of analog horror. Can we make that? And the Mirror Dimension that contains monsters like Bloody Mary, Dysmorphio, and David Lynch. Yes, as in film director David Lynch. I am losing my gosh dang mind because this is hilarious and exactly the sort of humor just made for me. Then there's a whole section about the concept of morality, which Bill believes is 100% flexible and that karma is a scam. He's immediately hit in the eye by a paper airplane after he says that, so I mean, you be the judge of whether or not he's right. That's funny, but the whole reason that I'm pointing this out is that he gives us, the reader, a moral test here. On this page, he's imprisoned an elf named Scrimbles with bones made of glass. If we turn the page and continue on our journey to learn all about the new lore, we'll crush Scrimbles and he'll die. That's hilariously dark and, well, I mean, sorry Scrimbles, there's lore to uncover. Forgive me. We also get some new lore about the Pines family. There's a whole section dedicated to the missing pages of Journal 3 and Ford's earliest interactions with Bill, and another where Bill talks about the dreams of many of the main characters, including Dipper. Bill explains that Dipper has a recurring nightmare about overhearing a fight between his parents that he wasn't supposed to hear, before wondering why Dipper and Mabel got sent to Gravity Falls for the summer on such short notice. Yeah, that's pretty dark, implying that this whole series only exists because their marriage was falling apart, and the parents needed Dipper and Mabel out of the house while they worked out what to do. Ouch, that one hits right in the feels. But okay, that was a lot of the fun, if weird and dark stuff here in the book. What's the real meat and potatoes, though? Where's the real lore? Well, again, true to his word, Bill tells us exactly where he comes from. Bill explains that he's from a world called Euclidia, where no one could comprehend the third dimension, but he was born with a mutation that lets him see into the third dimension. This was apparently cursed and forbidden knowledge. Bill claims that talking about the third dimension was illegal in his world. Despite this, Bill still wanted to share the truth with the rest of his people, but, well, we're not sure what happened, and neither is Bill. He says that he heard a loud buzzing and that he blacked out, and that he still does whenever he thinks about this, but when he came to, no one was alive in his universe except for him. He killed them all. Now, in this very explanation, Bill says that he's not some misunderstood character that can be humanized by a tragic backstory, but I'm not so sure about that. Like, don't get me wrong, Bill is a bad guy, an awful person, and definitely a villain, but I'm not so sure he ended up that way all on his own. At the beginning of this section, we see Bill bursting through a wall behind a TV with a strange symbol on it. Well, this is actually from the cover of a story called Flatland, written by Edwin Abbott Abbott. In Flatland, a two-dimensional square is visited by a three-dimensional sphere who teaches him to look outside of his perspective. And once the square learns about the third dimension, he tries to convince his fellow 2D shapes, but is jailed for what is considered madness. Perhaps something similar happened here with Bill, with some multi-dimensional being enlightening Bill and sending him down his villainous path. Regardless, the result is the same. Bill ended up killing everyone in Euclidia and moved on to a new universe. From here, Bill found himself in the Nightmare Dimension, where he formed a band of ne'er-do-wells called the Henchmaniacs to help him get up to all sorts of shenanigans. We actually know most of these characters from the actual show. For 1 trillion years, they robbed banks together, crashed planets together to make them kiss, conquered dynasties, and even recorded a Christmas album. But not all good things can last. Eventually, the Nightmare Realm came apart at the seams as entropy caught up with the universe and destroyed it. Bill then ended up in the series from the universe and was drawn to the area that would someday become Gravity Falls, where he met a shaman who created the prophecy of the 10 cosmic symbols from the series and banished Bill from the area. From here, Bill traveled the world and encountered different societies, the Aztecs and the Egyptians and the indigenous people of Easter Island. He also explains that Atlantis was real and apparently existed around the time of King Henry VIII. Seems like a major lore drop there, and I really want to know the implications of the whole world just like forgetting Atlantis was a thing, where it was, and how it sank. Fast forwarding past the events of Gravity Falls and Weirdmageddon, it's revealed that Bill did in fact survive being erased along with Stan's memories. He made a deal with the great Axolotl, who promised to let Bill live if he could overcome his greatest trial, the most dangerous thing Bill could possibly face: therapy. Yeah, really, the Axolotl sends Bill to a dimension outside of time called the Theraprism, where he has to make up for all of his cosmic crimes. What goes around comes around, huh? Regardless, this book is actually a project that Bill is working on while in therapy, and he smuggled it out of the Theraprism and into our reality against the rules of the institution. But Bill signs off the book by promising that someday he will get out. Someone will let him out, and we might have an idea just to who that is. At the very end of the book, I'm talking like the last couple pages, we see a picture of the Bill Cipher statue in the woods from the end of the series. However, if we turn the page, we see that same statue again, but its eye has started glowing. Why would the statue suddenly come to life here? Well, zoom in and look at his hand. A bird is perching on it. Has this bird shaken Bill's hand and unwittingly agreed to become his new host just by looking for a place to land? Maybe, yeah. In the days leading up to the Book of Bill's release, a Twitter account called the Oregon Parks Department opened as a viral marketing campaign and included pictures of a bird known as the Western Meadowlark. Look at this thing. This is a real bird that is the spitting image of Bill Cipher. The yellow chest even has a little black top hat shape at the top. This little birdie might have just given Bill Cipher the wings he needed to fly out of the Theraprism and back into the world of Gravity Falls once again. So yeah, that's the story of the Book of Bill, and a small hint to where things might be going, but that's just the topmost layer. We've already touched on a few of them, but this book is packed with additional secrets hidden if you read between the lines, and codes to crack that let us know so much more about this world. For instance, the Book of Bill confirms that there's a Gravity Fall multiverse in play here. In the Parallel Dimensions section, Bill points out just how improbable it was that Dipper and Mabel survived all of the events of the show without getting erased, drowned, frozen, or dismembered. But that's only because we're in the only timeline where that didn't happen. Yeah, in basically every other one, Dipper and Mabel die horrible deaths at the hands of all the freaky stuff from the series. What's more, the entirety of this multiverse is actually contained within a Pokemon card, like literally a Pokemon card, in the backpack of an unfathomable being outside of time named Dennis. Considering that our universe is part of this Gravity Falls multiverse, that means that we too are part of this Pokemon card. And it's not even shadowless. That's tragic. Oh, and speaking of, on this page explaining the Pokemon card multiverse, if you look closely, you'll see a series of symbols running down the side of the card. This is obviously a cipher, and when you decode it, it reads, "Warning, folding this card may result in crossovers." That, in and of itself, is a fun nod to the amount of multiversal crossovers we've gotten in the past few years, but there's actually a lot of crossovers hidden in this very book that create a really wide Disney cartoon cinematic universe. For instance, a Titan skull from the Owl House, another series that Alex Hirsch worked on, can be found in this section about the Dark Ages, while there's another rune cipher in that same section that translates to Titan blood. Later on, on, the Core's helmet from Amphibia can be seen in the Theraprism alongside Bill. And finally, early on in the Bill Tells All section, Bill is asked if he's the biological father of Phineas from Phineas and Ferb, before ending the interview. Phineas's triangle head suddenly makes a lot more sense, doesn't it? Regardless, all of this alongside Matt's previous theory that Rick and Morty also takes place in this same multiverse really means that there's a giant web of animation that's all connected here. Might just need to do a theory about that sometime, huh? Now, a lot of the hidden codes and mysteries in here are fun, like this Pokemon card connection, but others, well, not so much. Some of them are crazy complicated and hint at a darker story for Bill, one filled with regret and sorrow. For example, there's a code hidden in one of the pages in the Barnes & Noble edition of the book. Yeah, if you didn't know, Barnes & Noble had an exclusive version of the Book of Bill which had additional content, something that none of us here at Theorists realized until we'd already gotten our copies off of Amazon. Thank God for overnight shipping. Regardless, in the Messages on Your TV section in the Barnes & Noble edition, at the very bottom of the page, you'll notice a series of square color blocks. At first, I thought this was just a weird, glitchy effect to really drive home the analog nature of this page, with the scan lines and chromatic aberration and all the VHS goodness. But there's actually a pattern to these colors. Yeah, they correspond to letters of the alphabet, and if you decode the right order, it spells out the message: he never sleeps, he never dreams, but somehow still he hears their screams. This has to be about Bill. He isn't sleeping or dreaming, but he's still haunted by the screams of everyone he's killed. This is further driven home on the page covered in silly straws. There's a line of digits that all correspond with episodes of Gravity Falls and time codes within them, and when the words spoken at these time codes are all strung together, we get this message.
Twisted out of shape after them kill
The ghosts
of his family
are haunting
him still.
If that was a bit hard to follow, it says, twisted out of shape after the kill, the ghosts of his family are haunting him still. The memory of his parents, his original homeworld, are still haunting Bill, even after all these trillions of years. Also, we actually learn the name of his parents through another code in this book, and this has to be one of the most creative ciphers that I've ever encountered in my time here at Theorist. On the codes page, despite Bill insisting that there are no codes in this book, you'll notice a ring of letters carved into the tree here on this page. That might seem a bit random at first, but these letters line up perfectly with something else in the book. All throughout the pages, sometimes there are coffee ring stains that are a perfect size to fit inside this ring of letters. And there are gaps in the rings that line up with individual letters. And not only that, but there are other stains, little dots around the gaps that tell us the order of the letters here. If you spell out all of the letters from the rings and put them in the correct order here, it makes a new message that reads, his dimension now deceased, scalene in Euclid, rest in peace. A scalene is a type of triangle with sides and angles of all different lengths and degrees, while Euclid was an ancient Greek mathematician with expertise in geometry. These are the names of Bill's parents, the ones that still haunt his dreams, the ones who he can still hear the screams of. That is so dark and so cool, and one of the best puzzles I've ever encountered in a book like this. Seriously, a clap and a half for Alex here. But for as cool as that is, something's weird here, right? A lot of the codes in this book are written by Bill himself, and you can tell when they are. He has his own very specific way of speaking and his own rune cipher that is consistent for his character, but a lot of these, they don't sound like Bill, or they're talking about Bill. No, someone else is writing codes in here, and there are a few options, and who it is might end up being very important if Bill is truly coming back through that bird. First option? Well, the clear and obvious choice would be the Axolotl. He's already shown to be more powerful than Bill, enough to put him in therapy, so maybe he's trying to help Bill work through some stuff here. But that's also the most obvious option and the most boring. The second and less obvious option? Well, it could be the people that he's possessed over the years. Yeah, for real, we learn in the book that Bill isn't alone inside of his head. At the bottom of the page about skin, there's a section that gets cut off called Learning is Fun, but it's not what you'd expect. Instead of more factoids about skin, we're shown a cry for help from someone named Grebly Himberdrek of Zimtrex 5, one of thousands of souls that Bill has consumed over the years. It's not entirely clear how this would happen, but I think it's a pretty safe guess to say that these souls Bill consumed were the people that he's made deals with, and now they're stuck inside of Bill's mind, where he plays Good Vibrations by Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch on loop forever. That's actor Mark Wahlberg Wahlberg's previous career, by the way. Yes, he was a rapper, really. This also tells me that Alex Hirsch and I have a very similar sense of humor because I died laughing when I read this and immediately went and listened to the song. As a wise man once said, I want to get mine, so get yours. I want to see sweat coming out your pores. Regardless, we see here that one of these characters was able to take the wheel away from Bill enough to write this blurb. Perhaps they're also writing these secret codes and will help us fight Bill when he comes back. Or maybe the fight will be way more personal, with option number 3, Bill's ex-girlfriend. All throughout the book, Bill makes a point to avoid any questions about his own romantic history. In the love section, he redacts a couple of lines before exclaiming that his ex-partners were not relevant because I don't have any. Yeah, sure, Bill, sure. Later, while introducing his crew of henchmaniacs, one of them is completely scribbled out in red marker with a big label saying, not important. If you look through the red marker, you can barely make out that this character's name is Jessie, and her art looks like she has a lot of eyes, maybe 7 of them. If that doesn't mean anything to you, fair, but if you devoured Journal 3 when it released like we here at Theorists did, you'll recognize that this character looks and sounds a lot like a character known as the Oracle. This is a 7-eyed woman named Jesselbrom the Unswerving, a name that could easily be shortened to Jessie, a character that Bill clearly doesn't want us to think about because she is his ex-girlfriend. That would explain why Jessie didn't show up in Weirdmageddon. If she and Bill broke up on bad terms, enough so that Bill wants to scrub her out of his own history? Yeah, she wouldn't want to show up for that. Maybe she's the one who is writing these codes about Bill's regrets, something that she would know as his ex-partner, trying to help us find a way to beat him in the future. To me, that is the most exciting option, Jessie coming back and trying to help defeat her evil ex once and for all. But we'll just have to wait and see. So yeah, all in all, that's the story and the codes hidden in the Book of Bill. It's a lot, and there are puzzles and ciphers here that go even deeper, and weird choices that might not make a lot of sense if you read this book with zero context. Like, for real, I mentioned this earlier, but there are just straight up several pages ripped from The Great Gatsby republished in here. Strange, right? Well, there was a reason for that, one that starts us down a whole new rabbit hole. Let me explain. After we accept Bill's offer at the beginning of the book, it sort of resets, and we're given a new cover and a new page full of all the publishing information of the book. All of this information is now themed around Bill, and at the bottom of the page, we're encouraged to visit thisisnotawebsite.com. If you did that early on, like right after the book was released, you were asked for a password. What was this password? Well, early on in the book, we're given the one true intelligence test, and one of the puzzles just looked like a bunch of random lines and squiggles. And if you look physically at this image at an extreme angle, the lines form into words and gives you this message. Need a password? Fine, I'll talk. It's the name of the eyeball doc. And guess what? The pages of The Great Gatsby talk about the eyeball doctor, T.J. Eckelberg. Type T.J. Eckelberg into the website and bam, a whole new world is opened up for us to explore. Okay, so what exactly is thisisnotawebsite.com? When the website was first discovered and this password entered, there was just a countdown clock, and when that hit 0, nothing happened. We were just hit with a series of technical difficulty pages involving Seuss trying to get things working. If you clicked on Seuss, he'd even change up what he was saying, offering links to a full copy of The Great Gatsby and some Gravity Falls themed lo-fi. A lot of people thought that this was part of the ARG, and it might have been. However, Alex Hirsch quickly took to Twitter explaining that sometimes technical difficulties are just technical difficulties. If I were to guess, I don't think Alex, Disney, or anyone else expected the sheer amount of interest in this ARG, and things just weren't ready, or the website went down from the sheer amount of traffic that they were seeing. But eventually, those technical difficulties were ironed out, and the website relaunched, this time featuring a desk within the Mystery Shack complete with haunting music, ambient rain, and a glitchy computer just begging to be toyed with. A ton of the things on this desk are actually interactable. For example, if you click on the Book of Bill here with the dagger in it, it'll open up the book and give us a note for Dipper written by Uncle Ford, telling us that he was mining the book for secrets before chucking it into a bottomless pit. That must have been the portal that let it end up in our reality, where Alex Hirsch got his hands on it and put Bill on the path to the bestsellers list. I guess that this also means that since the book is here in this website in the Mystery Shack, I suppose that this means that this canonically takes place before we get our copies of the book? Hopefully Time Baby isn't gonna hunt us down for breaking the timeline. Before we move on, there are a few other treats hidden in this scene too. Like, for instance, if you click on the skull's golden tooth, you're given one get out of death free coupon only for use in participating reality. realities. And clicking on the bottle with the eyeball in it will give you a snapshot of the interdimensional portal. Dang, Bill was right, that was very difficult to say out loud. Regardless, this was another portal constructed by dolphins, but unfortunately for Bill, it didn't work out. Porpoises don't got no opposable thumbs. And finally, clicking the McGucket logo on the computer gives us a note left behind by Old Man McGucket. In case you need a refresher, this guy was a surprisingly big player in Gravity Falls. He was a hillbilly who was once a genius, but he voluntarily scrambled his brain after witnessing Bill's antics in the Nightmare Realm firsthand. And now, it looks like his old computer is the key to solving this ARG. See, you can actually type words into this computer, and if it matches something in the computer's database, you're given a clue or an Easter egg.
How did I get inside this computer? How do I get out of here? Bill!
Now, there's a lot of stuff you can type in here, but we're not going to be doing a comprehensive breakdown. If you're looking for that, there are tons of great videos here on YouTube from creators like Hannah Hyperfixates that do a great job of breaking it all down. So, for us here today, we're just going to be focusing on a few key codes, and some that I just kind of thought were funny. Like, I'm not above entering Mabel a 11 million times and Mabelizing the whole lab. Just makes it feel more like home, you know? Plus, this is where you get Matt's cameo on the website, therefore making all of us theorists here canon in Gravity Falls.
Hello, Internet! This time, you're on your own. Good luck.
Just still blows my mind. So where do we even start here? Well, using McGucket's note as a jumping off point, there are a couple of passcodes we can try that are hidden in here. The one of most consequence is Goodnight Sally, and it starts us down a ridiculous rabbit hole. This code pulls up an image of a yellow graphic tee with Bill dancing while a church burns down in the background. Fun, but there's more hidden in this image than first meets the eye. If you zoom in on Bill's left shoe, the one that's outstretched, you may notice a series of small dots and dashes running along the edge of the shoe sole. This is, of course, Morse code, and it spells out Deonarap. That's paranoid backwards. Then, if you type in Deonarap to the computer, we get a conspiracy board that would make even Pepe Sylvia proud. There's a lot to take in here. Hints that Bill was involved with the Kennedy assassination, had links to inventor Nikola Tesla, and Russian mystic Rasputin, was literally the iceberg that sank the Titanic, and is the reason that the Bermuda Triangle is so funky. Also, you just gotta love Bill's apparent belief that Doritos are a, quote, crude attempt at mockery. That one earned a legit guffaw from me. I love this page, but the reason we're talking about it today is that there's actually a clever puzzle hidden here. All throughout the conspiracy board, you'll notice some strange groupings of letters. An OC here and EHT there. Well, if you find them all and put them all together, it makes the phrase Stad et Tinach. That's connect the dots backwards. Now, I'll admit I spent an embarrassingly long amount of time trying to connect the dots here on the page to actually make something work before I realized it's just another code. Type that backwards phrase into the website, and once again, you're given a treasure trove of new information. Are you sensing a pattern here? This gives us a chapter of a fictional book called Lesser Known American Cults, and tells us about ciphertologists, described as the first cult in history that was right. By possessing the body of snake oil salesman Silas Birchtree, Bill was able to build himself a following as he turned the city of Orchard Lake, Kansas into Billville. Here, his followers started to build him a portal before the plan was foiled by a rebel named Emmeline Butternubbins. Yes, Butternubbins. I continue to be in awe of Hirsch's ability to name things. Regardless, this chapter ends with a message hidden in Cipher's special alphabet. Translated, it reads, "You can't kill an idea," and typing that into the computer gives us a pamphlet for ciphertologists. Now, this might just seem like the end of this particular rabbit hole, but just put a pin in that. Another rabbit hole we can dive down involves us just typing in the word riddle. This brings up a screen that just asks us, would you like to play a game? Suddenly we are in Saw. Of course, you know us, we are absolutely up for this. If you type in yes to answer it, you're again asked a question. This time, what's McGucket's favorite soda? This answer is actually found back in the Book of Bill, on the page depicting the nightmare that is McGucket's mind. In this tornado of awfulness, we can see a can of soda labeled Mountain Don't. I personally prefer Voltage or Baja Blast myself, but you know, personal preference. Type in Mountain Don't, and we're once again given another riddle. Oh boy. Yeah, all in all, there are about another dozen of these riddles, but eventually we're asked the question, Bill Cipher's lawyer? That might seem nonsensical, but this is actually where that pamphlet comes in. If you scour that thing, you'll see that Bill is represented by the law firm Caesar, Atbash, and Visionaire. All of those happen to be the names of 3 very popular code ciphers, so that's a fun Easter egg. Type those in, and you're asked who defeated Silas Birchtree. If you don't remember, that was the guy Bill took over to lead the ciphertologists, and he was beaten by the hilariously named Emmeline Butternubbins. Type that last name in, and we're finally told we have earned a treat. Follow these instructions, and it'll actually download a zip file onto your computer called Bill's Files Do Not Open. You have to know every cybersecurity alarm in my head is going off right now, but come on, we gotta open this. Don't screw us, Disney. Thankfully, it's just a bunch of wallpapers, a reward for figuring out this ridiculously complex puzzle. And nothing else, right? Well, at this point, we'll see. It feels like everything in this website is part of a greater puzzle, from fun wallpapers to fake law firms on pamphlets. Now, speaking of fake law firms, we can actually summon Bill's very own lawyer and sign away our soul to him, and this starts us down another rabbit hole. Signing over our soul here will turn the flame of this candle blue, signaling that we're now part of Bill. But that's not the only change it makes. Now, we can interact with the knob on this computer, and doing so treats us to some unsettling audio coming out of the static. This is not our first rodeo, theorists. This is clearly some backwards audio, and it says... Someone is begging for help, someone that Bill killed. Now, right away, this is cool because in the Book of Bill, Bill mentions that he can hear something going on in TV static. So now that we've signed our soul away to him, we can hear it too. We can also learn from another code here on the website that one of Bill's phobias is TV static, so he doesn't love how creepy this is. All in all, this is a neat touch and great character building for Bill, but it's also a huge deal for the story of Gravity Falls moving forward. See, in our last theory, we pointed out a section of the Book of Bill where clearly one of the souls that Bill had claimed was somehow using his power to influence the book, writing out pleas for help. Something similar is happening here, just on the website. Someone that Bill has killed is reaching out through this static after we've made our deal with Bill. But who? Well, we actually see them in multiple places throughout this book and this ARG. It's been one of the best secrets hidden in plain sight. See, again in that last theory, we pointed out that it was clear that not all of the writing in the book was done by Bill himself. Obviously, some of the other pages were done by other characters like Ford, but even some of the secret codes were from other characters, and we figured that was the case because they were talking about Bill. We wondered if it was Jessie the Oracle, the character we identified as Bill's ex, and while that may partially be the case, she's clearly not the only one writing in this book. Like we said, obviously pages from Journal 3 were written by Ford, and he also has some of his own codes hidden throughout the book, and a Viking named Olaf seems to be behind the writing in runes as well. But one of the strangest codes was the color block cipher, first deciphered by Reddit user JimBag777. Yeah, these things were a deep cut, but now we can figure out who wrote these. Huge shoutouts to friend of the channel, Rim Games, for being the first person I saw put this together in his series all about the Book of Bill. In his video solving much of thisisnotawebsite.com, he was able to figure out that the color block codes were coming from very specific people. Bill's family and the rest of his race, the people of Euclidia. Yeah, the people that Bill admitted to killing in the book. The color block code is just their language. But how do we know this? Well, this is because of a few things. Firstly, one of the color code blocks refers to Bill as Little Billy and talks about his childhood. This was the same affectionate name that Bill's mom used for him, which we see in another color block code. Another color block code translates to some sort of eulogy for Euclidia, something that sounds like it would have been written by a Euclidean, while yet another points us to a Euclidean government agency. And just the cherry on top, when lightning flashes in the Mystery Shack, you can see the Latin phrase Vallis Cineris, or Valley of Ashes, written on the back wall. Typing that into the computer gives us a video of little baby Bill being held by his parents, who are obscured and consumed by TV static. And that voice we talked about earlier, it comes back.
Why did you do it?
This confirms that the voice we heard in the static were from the Euclideans, maybe even Bill's parents, thus why Bill is so terrified of static. Again, huge props to Remy for putting all of that together. Now, you might just think that this is some fun Easter egg, some backstory for Bill, but it's way more than that. This is the key to the future plot points of this series. The people Bill has killed are still in his head, and now with the knowledge that his parents and the other Euclideans are also passing messages along, that's huge. They're also still in his head, and they're the key to beating Bill. Yeah, you heard that right, and there's a ton of proof for this on the website. Like, if you type in Grunkle Stan into the computer multiple times, eventually it'll lead to a pop-up where you can ask Bill how Stan beat him. Clicking through the prompt repeatedly will twist the knife into Bill's ego, and eventually he'll break. break, revealing a series of increasingly staticky messages. They read, "Sometimes when I close my eye, I can still see," and then 4 messages in the various ciphers from the book. When translated, they read, "Through the eyes of everyone I've ever. Sometimes when I close my eye, I can still see through the eyes of everyone I've ever killed." That's what I bet the message ends as. Then Bill screams. He can't turn it off. That is his weakness. Plus, I've seen a lot of great evidence pointed out by the community that the major human historical figures that Bill talks about in the Book of Bill are also stuck in his head, and they're using Bill's powers against him, trying to warn other characters about Bill's future plans. And with our belief that Bill has once again escaped through the bird that landed on this statue, that is a pretty massive dangling plot thread to leave hanging and have a solution for in the text if they're never going to address it, which is precisely why they are going to address it. See, I believe that they're going to bring back Gravity Falls in a big way, all thanks to this little ARG and your excitement for it, and there's a ton of evidence to prove this. First off, if you type Season 3 into the computer, it spits back out Season 2. Type that in and it gives you Season 1. But if you type that in, well then it gives you Season -1, Anti-Gravity Falls. This is an absolute curveball and it could mean a lot of things. Maybe this is a spin-off. Maybe it's some sort of new movie or video game or comic or something. But personally, I think it's pointing towards some sort of prequel series involving Stan or Ford. That's why it's Season -1. Alex has gone on record saying that he'd love to do more stories with Stan and Ford, and if he does that story, it needs to be its own book or series.
If I ever wanted to do something with this show more in a animated context, I'm keeping certain material for that. If I'm going to do some adventures with Stan and Ford, either they need their own book or their own miniseries.
But that's just one possibility. It's one I definitely think they're going to be exploring, but it's not the only one. They could also do some sort of sequel series or movie involving all the souls trapped in Bill's head, like we worked out here today. My friend Ryder from Foot of a Ferret actually pitched that out in one of his own recent videos, and it does sound great. And really, I think a continuation of the show just makes sense. This is the same company that made X-Men 97 after all, and with other massive fan favorites from the mid-2010s like Regular Show and Adventure Time getting a ton of continuations and spin-offs, it just fits perfectly. So why? Why haven't they just announced it yet? Why hasn't there been any movement on this despite the massive fan interest in this series and some sort of revival? It's simple, friends. Alex Hirsch legally can't work on it right now. See, back in 2018, Alex signed an agreement with Netflix to exclusively develop shows and movies for the streamer, and we know for a fact that he's still under this contract. In April of 2024, Alex did an interview on the channel Hannah Hyperfixates where he said,
I could probably talk Disney into a miniseries if I was out of my Netflix deal and I really wanted to.
If he could get out of his deal. He's still under contract to produce shows and movies for Netflix. Regardless, this quote was from before the Book of Bill released and was a smashing success, and you best believe that there's some real interest from everyone involved now in making this happen. Just recently at New York Comic-Con, Alex said that Disney were the ones that reached out asking him for another Gravity Falls story.
Disney reached out and asked if I had another Gravity Falls book kicking around in my brain.
And now, everyone involved realizes that there's a real hunger for more Gravity Falls content, all because of your excitement. You, me, we all made that happen. The only domino left to fall is getting Alex out of his Netflix deal, and I bet there are lawyers working their butts off to make that one happen. Mini theory number 1. Is this the limit for Bill Cipher's power? So, along with giving us just a ton of backstory for Bill Cipher, I believe that the Book of Bill also gives us a good reason as to how and why the great Axolotl has so much power over Bill. Why Bill is scared of him and doesn't seem to like axolotls in general. Hear me out. So, if you don't know, the great Axolotl is like the god in the Gravity Falls universe, and he has enough power to both save Bill from the destruction at the end of Weirdmageddon and then imprison him in interdimensional therapy in the Book of Bill. So, because of that, Bill kind of just tries to avoid the great Axolotl when and where he can. And it's not just the great Axolotl that Bill doesn't seem to like. In another Book of Bill theory, we talked about a puzzle hidden on thisisnotawebsite.com that revealed other lost pages of Journal 3. This one tells the story of a pet axolotl given to Ford named Frillium, and how Bill doesn't like the little guy, eventually convincing Ford to release him back into the wild. Bill clearly didn't want this thing that represented the great axolotl entity, or maybe even had a slice of his power, anywhere near Ford or the portal they were building. So why? Why is Bill so concerned about axolotls, even if they're not a deity? Why does the great axolotl have so much power over Bill? Well, it all might come down to a little bit of science. See, early on in the Book of Bill, Bill mentions that he can invade and possess anything with neurons. Those are nerve nerve cells typically found in the brain or spinal cord that help pilot our nervous systems. This is actually how and why he can manipulate the Book of Bill as we read it. See, the pages of the book are made from pureed human brain matter pressed into sheets and bound together. So, since there are neurons on this page, easy peasy for Bill to change things around. In fact, while we're on that subject, the book itself is just like strangely organic. It has a human spine. Bill asks the reader for blood to use as ink on pages. There are straight up souls inside of it that will scream if the book is burned. You know, it's just as dark as you'd come to expect from Bill Cipher. But here's the thing. Axolotls are pretty unique when it comes to their nervous system and neurons. It's pretty well known that axolotls have incredible healing abilities. They can regrow limbs with ease. They're basically like Wolverine with a straight up healing factor. But this also extends to the neurons in their brains. See, unlike humans and other mammals, the healing of axolotls also extends to their cranium. According to recent studies, axolotls are able to regenerate their brains, even if large portions are damaged or removed. On top of that, they were able to reconnect a lot of the neurons in their brains with each other too, meaning that the regrown brain had the same functions. If Bill takes control of creatures through the neurons in their brains, and axolotls can regrow damaged neurons, theoretically, axolotls could regrow the neurons infected by Bill, meaning that he wouldn't be able to control them for very long, if at all. That's why he doesn't like regular axolotls, and likely a reason why he's so scared of the all-powerful Great Axolotl. I guess not even Bill Cipher can beat the science. Despite all of the collective work put into ripping these mysteries apart, we as a community haven't found everything in the book. See, at a recent panel that Alex Hirsch attended at Emotion London 2024, he took to the stage to let us know that we haven't found everything yet.
Now, I'll say most of the secrets of the book, since it's come out thanks to Reddit, have been discovered. Most of them. I'm not going to tell you where the undiscovered secret is.
Oh, is that a challenge? You know we have to rise to this occasion and take our crack at it. And while no one has found that secret yet, I think I have a hunch about what this puzzle is, and what exactly it means for the future of this series. And if I'm right, this puzzle's gonna show us a dimension where Bill Cipher has no power, which might be the key to defeating him once and for all. But by the end of this theory today, I'm not afraid to admit that I might need your help to solve this completely. This is the hardest puzzle in the Book of Bill after all. So please, grab your code breakers and journals, loyal theorists. We have to take a crack at solving this final puzzle. So, okay, where do we even start with this? There's so much packed into the Book of Bill, and this is not a website.com, that it seems daunting. But thankfully, I do believe we have a lead. See, at this same panel where he said the puzzle hasn't been found, Alex jokingly scrolled through the Book of Bill while searching for a hint, and he landed on a random page. The start of the missing pages of Journal 3 revealed in the Book of Bill. So I don't know if I need to tell you this, but nothing is random, loyal theorists. This has to be a hint, and I think I know exactly where this thread leads. See, in the corner of this page, you'll notice some art of an axolotl that doesn't actually appear in the Book of Bill, but you can still find this page on the website. Yeah, in the Journal 3 section of the Book of Bill, you'll find a page with a snake on it, and hidden on the snake is one of Bill's ciphers. Translated, it reads Ouroboros. An Ouroboros is a symbol of a snake eating its own tail, symbolizing an unending cycle. It was common in Egyptian, Greek, and Norse myth, and has been used symbolically in everything from the X-Files to Full Metal Alchemist to Ninjago. Regardless, if you enter this code into McGucket's computer, it reveals these missing pages with the axolotl art. Man, this is such a cool puzzle and even fits with the hint hidden here, right? Like an Ouroboros represents an unending cycle, and to get this clue, you need to go back and forth between the website and the book in an infinite cycle. It just makes sense. Regardless, this page tells us about a gift that McGucket once got Ford, a pet axolotl, which he got for Ford because he thought the frills reminded him of Ford's sideburns. Ford even names him Frillium because that's the cutest thing ever, and I think I'm gonna die. Ford was initially delighted by the pet, but at the time he was also working with Bill, and Bill did not like the little creature. In fact, he seemed entirely revulsed by it, and told Ford that he shouldn't have any distractions while they worked on their portal together. And so, Ford released the axolotl into a creek behind his lab, and though it looked back at him with a bittersweet sympathy, it left. Of course, if you know anything about Gravity Falls lore, all of this will make sense to you. A strange quirk of axolotl biology means that they can regrow their limbs if they're ever lost, something that Ford finds appealing. As he says, to be wounded but leave no scars. Because of this ability, and along with being entirely adorable and lovable little creatures, axolotls represented rebirth in Aztec mythology. But within the series, the axolotl represents represents far more than just rebirth. The highest deity within the Gravity Falls universe also takes the form of an axolotl and acts as a direct rival for Bill Cipher. If Bill is a being all about destruction and chaos in a quest for immortality, the great axolotl is the opposite of that. It's a being of healing and rebirth. Now, all of this is a beautiful little story and a good representation of these two cosmic forces sort of pulling on Ford and the rest of the Pines family in a galactic game of tug of war. But there's something else here on these pages, and this is why I think this was the hint from Alex. See, on the second page of this journal entry, there's a little doodle of a quote, new star system down at the very bottom of the page. Now, this stuck out to me a lot because the study of stars and other star systems just fascinates me, and at first I wondered if this was something very familiar. See, while it's not perfect, it reminded me of the Alpha Centauri star system, which is actually the closest star system to our solar system. But it doesn't really line up super well when you actually examine it under a microscope. Plus, it says new star system, and we've known about Alpha Centauri for centuries. But despite that, I do wonder if there's some information we can sort of glean out of this. See, in physics and astronomy, there's a principle known as the three-body problem. Yeah, that isn't just a solid book series and Netflix show, it's an actual real scientific concept. So what is it then? Well, when you have two bodies floating out in space affecting one another, like two big stars or planets, it's very easy to use math and science to predict the speeds and locations of those objects far into the future. However, if you add a third body in there, like a third big star or planet, all of a sudden it becomes very hard to make any of the same predictions, to the point where this three-body problem becomes more or less unsolvable. I'm hoping that that isn't a sign of things to come here for this puzzle and that it is indeed solvable for us, but that doesn't bode very well. But hey, here's the thing. This little doodle was done in blue ink, which is the pen color that's been associated with McGucket throughout all of the This Is Not a Website entries. Plus, on top of that, this isn't the only time we've seen a little solar system doodle like this. Yeah, there's another one in one of the best hidden codes that the Book of Bill has to offer. A little while back, Reddit user Kirkathy was one of the first to notice this little teeny tiny code deep within the fold of 2 pages of the book. You basically have to crack your book in half to even see it, but when you translate it, it reads, "Destruction is a form of creation." That seems very much like something Bill would believe, wouldn't it? Well, typing this into the website gives us another clue, and I believe this is the end game for this whole mystery. Yeah, as you can see, this thing is wild. It's a note page from McGucket's personal notebook that is just scribbled from left to right, top to bottom, with text and equations and doodles and codes. And if you look down at the sticky note at the bottom of the page, you'll notice a similar looking solar system drawn in the same color. Yeah, it's not quite the same, but enough that I feel like these have to be connected. Oh, and before you suggest that this is an atom, there's actually an atomic drawing elsewhere on the page that is a different style. So this leans much more in the design of a solar system than an atom. Regardless, because of that connection, is there something else on this page that could lead us to some answers? Well, the most obvious thing here is this giant drawing cutting through the middle of the page, which has McGucket concluding that there is a giant hole in space-time, and this might be the key to stopping Bill. But here's where the difficulty of the puzzle comes into play. No one, us at Theorist HQ included, have been able to quite figure out what this page is pointing to yet, and believe me, that is not for a lack of trying. For example, a few of the talented theorists over at the Gravity Falls Reddit and Discord have taken to overlaying parts of the Book of Bill or those unlockable wallpapers we discussed in our last theory onto this note page. And honestly, while that sounds absolutely bonkers on paper, badum-tish, certain things do line up super well. Maybe well enough to not be a coincidence. Like, one of the wallpapers is a Bill Cipher themed Ouija board, and if you line up the yes and no on the board with the yes and no and the infinity symbol on this note page, well, one guess of what lines up with the big hole in space if you do this. Yeah, that's the symbol of Bill on the Ouija board. That's really compelling, and only one of the things they found that lined up really well. Maybe there is something more going on to this here. But while that is super fascinating and might lead somewhere, that's not what I want to talk about with this page. No, instead, what I want to focus on is something a bit more surface level here. See, one One of the big pieces of text on this page reads, "I cannot see him, he is blind." At first, that might seem like a little bit of a confusing phrase, but in the Book of Bill, we learn that Bill once possessed McGucket's brain and left because it was just too much for him. I believe that this left McGucket forever scarred, and also led him to find a way to completely shield himself from Bill, a way to never be seen by him in his all-seeing eye ever again. So, you cannot see him, he is blind. And, well, I believe that McGucket found one. If you notice on the sides of the grid, there are two numbers that are circled, column 12 and row 20. If you cross-reference these on the actual sheet, you'll notice that they line up with the number 35. And there's a space right before 35 that itself is circled and labeled weak point. And if this weak point is right before 35, I would presume that this has to be 34. Now, that could just be a coincidence, but this isn't the only time we've seen 34 in this ARG, nor is it the only time that it's said to be a blind spot for Bill. If you type 7 eyes into the website, it brings up a Polaroid portrait of a shadowy figure, and if you squint, you can make out that this is Jesselbrom the Unswerving. This is the Oracle from Journal 3, and if our previous Book of Bill theory is correct, she is also Bill's ex-lover and former henchmaniac that betrayed him. Now, that in and of itself is fascinating, that she'd be referenced again here in this ARG, but if you flip the Polaroid over, it reveals the message, "Leave him. Escape to dimension blank. It's against the rules, but it's the one reality where you may be safe from him." Clearly, she's talking about Bill here and the desire to find a reality that's shielded from him. Perhaps some sort of weak point, just like what's labeled on McGucket's page. If that's too much of a stretch for you, hey, that's fair, but it's not all. See, at the bottom of this flipped Polaroid, barely visible in the dark ink, you'll find another code. When you translate it, it reads, "Set chords for dimension reality." That's reality spelled with the number 34, like Leet speak. Also, it is not beyond me that Alex absolutely slipped a subtle R34 joke into a Disney project. Absolute king. Regardless, there's that connection again. 34, reality, a weak spot where Bill can't see, and the one reality where you may be safe from him. All of it lines up. Clearly, Dimension 34, this reality, is a blind spot for Bill. Or maybe it's even more dangerous than that. Maybe it could be the end of the entire multiverse. See, if you type reality with the 34 into thisisnotawebsite.com, you're given a bunch of photographs of Bill's friends, the henchmaniacs, explaining that they've found a new home. We know from Gravity Falls Lost Legends, the first Gravity Falls comic, that the henchmaniacs survived Weirdmageddon, and this tells us that they've somehow escaped the Nightmare Realm and now they're living in Dimension 34. Bad news, right? Well, it could get even worse. Another interpretation of McGucket's note is that reality is not a weak point for Bill, but one for the entire fabric of space-time. This could explain why Jesse's message on the Polaroid says that going there is against the rules. If it's a weak point for the entire multiverse, one wrong move could unravel everything. With that in mind, it's not a far leap to assume that maybe this reality is comprised of some sort of antimatter. If you don't know, antimatter is a real scientific concept. It's basically like negative matter. For every atom of real material, there's an equal and opposite particle of antimatter, and should matter and antimatter ever come into contact, well, the results could be explosive. So, going to a dimension of antimatter, one that's a weak spot potentially for the whole multiverse, could be bad news. Plus, in our last theory, we speculated that a series called Anti-Gravity Falls might be one of the ways the franchise moves forward, either as a prequel or a sequel. Perhaps some sort of Anti-Gravity Falls, as in the town, lies inside of this Dimension 34, and Dipper and Mabel and everyone else is gonna have to go there to defeat Bill. Mini theory number 2, is Dimension 34 from the Book of Bill just our universe? The real world? In one of our previous theories, we suggested that there was a dimension in the Gravity Falls multiverse where Bill has no power. There was a lot of evidence pointing towards this dimension being Reality 34, or just reality, spelled like that. But we also asked for your help to do some more digging to really make this theory a home run. And one of the biggest suggestions I saw was that reality was actually the real world, literally our universe. The thought process here comes down to the fact that the photographs we see of the henchmaniacs in reality are all incredibly realistic. Far more realistic than most of the other art we've seen in Gravity Falls, or that was made for the Book of Bill, or thisisnotawebsite.com. Capcom.com. That would mean that our world is the safe point outside of Bill's nearly omnipotent power, and maybe that future Gravity Falls media could include a live-action series or ARG. I think it makes a lot of narrative sense, but sadly, I just don't think it quite works out. Let me break down why. Firstly, we know for certain that Bill has been able to look into the real world. That's literally how the Book of Bill interfaces with us as readers. We are interacting with him through the book and the ARG website. On top of that, we previously did a theory suggesting that Bill had possessed Gravity Falls creator Alex Hirsch, which was confirmed in the Book of Bill. If our reality was a blind spot for Bill where he has no power, how would he be able to do either of those things, or even communicate with us from the Theraprism? But on top of that, we also have to keep in mind the 2016 Gravity Falls scavenger hunt, or the Cipher hunt, which ended with a life-size statue of Bill being discovered in Reedsport, Oregon. Back in the day, the Cipher hunt implied that the statue was literally the one we saw from the cartoon series, and that therefore the animated series was set in our reality. But the new information we have from the Book of Bill makes it pretty clear that our reality is a separate one from Gravity Falls. The book is thrown through a dimensional portal in the Gravity Falls universe and ends up here in the real world. That would mean that this statue from the Cipher hunt was from a different time that Bill Cipher had entered our universe. My guess is that this is from when Alex Hirsch first made his deal with Bill, assuming that Matt's final Gravity Falls theory is correct. Either way, it means that Bill has been in our world before, has used his powers to make deals here, and therefore that this is not reality. So yeah, while it's a great idea, and you guys are awesome for putting the pieces together, I sadly just don't think it quite works. Still though, it wouldn't surprise me to see a live-action installment to the franchise because of these realistic pictures of the Henchmaniacs. Now, the real question is whether or not they'll be as vomit-inducing as the other live-action Disney remakes. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut! Up next on Film Theory.
The Blacklight edition of Journal 3 sent me down a rabbit hole that led me to only one conclusion. Alex Hirsch, creator of Gravity Falls, he is Bill Cipher. Or rather, he's possessed by Bill Cipher in the real world.